say hello. I'm Jason from Fable's editorial team. I'm Jason Bogue. I'm an author. I'm a journalist, and I just love working with the book clubs here on Fable. I help build all of the moderator commentary and the book club experiences that we have here. And I've gotten to work with so many wonderful people, including, I'm really proud today to introduce Michele Celeste Garcia. She's a member of our Authors Guild Band's book club. She's an avid reader across all genres and English as a foreign language teacher and a writer working on a perpetual first draft of a novel. I can relate to that. She splits her time between Turin, Italy and Santa Fe, New Mexico. And you can find her hauling suitcases stuffed full of books rather than clothes between those two destinations. I can also relate to that, although I will say having digital books in my life has made that a little bit easier. She's been a member of the Authors Guild Band's book club on Fable since the beginning, and she loves interacting with other readers and writers through the app. And she hopes one day she can add the word formally before band in its title. And I think that's a great goal that we can all have here. She also moderates the Doorstoppers Epic Read Book Club on Fable. So welcome, Michele. And I do want to say I'm going to be posting links for anyone who's joining us as this goes on. I will be posting links to both the Authors Guild Band Book Club and the Doorstoppers Epic Reads Book Club on Fable, because they're both wonderful places, free places to read great books with our community. So welcome. Welcome, Michele. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm calling in from Los Angeles today. That's where I live. It's very sunny and it's a nice day. And we're also later today celebrating my son's birthday, which I'm really excited about. So it's a very happy day.
Congratulations.
And
Yeah,
we'll make
that's
sure
fantastic.
to read some books with him as well. So before we get started, I just wanted to say, just as both a reader and as a writer, I would not be here today if it wasn't for educators and librarians like both you and Summer, who we're going to meet in a minute, who put the books in front of me that changed my life, the books that kind of set me on this journey as a reader. And I'm just so proud and happy to be able to have this event where we can talk about some of those books and hopefully inspire some other kids and young readers now. But I would definitely not be here without the help of people like you. So thank you for your help. And I'm now going to step back and turn this over to you so you can introduce our guest of honor and start this Q&A. And we are recording this event, so we'll share it with everyone in the Authors Guild Band Book Club and the Fable community at large. So welcome to everyone who's watching this on a later date.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, as Jason said, I'm Michele Garcia, and I want to thank everyone for joining us at our Band Books Club author event. Our book club began on Fable earlier this year, and we proudly discuss banned books together. If you haven't already joined, please do so you can start reading and discussing books with us there at our free club. The Fable app works in a way that we're able to read and share annotations together and start conversations right inside the ebooks, kind of like Wattpad for bestsellers. Today, I'm really honored and excited to be welcoming Summer Boismier. I'd like to tell you a little bit about her for those of you who haven't heard of her or know much about her background. She's a lifelong reader. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers. She was born and raised in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. A reflection of Oklahoma public education, Summer has been a secondary level ELA teacher in public schools for almost a decade. She is currently pursuing a doctoral degree in English education at the University of Oklahoma, which she hopes to complete in 2024. Summer is not only fully committed to the causes of anti-censorship and culturally sustaining inclusive education for all, but also to a deep and abiding belief that lasagna is most definitely a sandwich. I'm joining you all from Italy, and I don't know what the Italians would think about that argument, Summer. It would be interesting to find out. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today, Summer, and I want to thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you, Michelle, and thank you to everyone on Fable who is listening live, and possibly days down the line. I'm really excited and humbled to have this platform to be able to discuss the importance and significance of literature.
Yeah, and at the end of this session, Fable is going to share a video from your event last month with the Brooklyn Public Library. And in that video, you go into a lot more in-depth information about what happened to your career in Oklahoma. But I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of background about what happened there at your high school.
Sure. So before I kind of jump into a summary of that background, I do just want to say really everything I think that we're going to talk about and discuss in this event needs to be focused and centered on the real main characters here, and that is our students who are in our public schools, our teachers who are educating them in our public schools, and really anyone around the country who understands the value of a good book. So last year, Governor Stitt signed into law Oklahoma's HB 1775. This is a type of legislation known as a divisive concepts law, and Oklahoma is not the only state with that kind of legislation on the books. What the law aims to do, among other things, is to restrict classroom conversation around race, sex, and gender. Because the law is so incredibly broad, because it is attempting to legislate intent and feeling, and that ambiguity is by design, its implementation is so problematically capricious that it's resulted in a climate of fear, uncertainty, and self-censorship in PK-12 education in Oklahoma. In response to this law and the moral panic, right, it has engendered my school district and my particular school site. So I taught at Norman High School in Norman, Oklahoma. My school and my district advised teachers to either cull their classroom libraries. So these are the generally teacher-funded libraries of books that educators keep in their classrooms for students, to either cull those classroom libraries of problematic texts or restrict student access temporarily. However, there was no time frame given for temporarily. Could that be a week, a month, a year? And that's a problem. I chose the latter option. So what I did to my classroom library shelves, I have about 500-ish books in my classroom library that I have intentionally curated over the years for my students. I covered my shelves with butcher paper, and because I'm an English teacher, I like me a good text feature. I added the caption that I stand by even today: books the state doesn't want you to read. In addition to that caption, I had found a link online to the Books Unbanned initiative created and housed within the Brooklyn Public Library in Brooklyn, New York. This program was available to, and is available to, students across the country, ages 13 to 21, and it gives students access to an e-card, which then gives students access to BPL's online and digital catalogs. So I took that link, I put it into a QR code, and then I proceeded to place that QR code around the room for students if they wanted to scan and continue to access the books that they could no longer physically access in my classroom.
So basically you found yourself on the wrong side of things, at least in someone's opinion, because of the fact that you put this QR code. It was kind of not necessarily the fact that you covered up the books, but the fact that you put the QR code there. So that was kind of giving, the QR code was giving even more access to these books to students, and easy access. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big fan of expanding access to texts, and of course making that access as easy as possible. It is it's not my fault that the law's authors forgot about the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I'm just curious to know, we're both educators. My area is a little bit different from yours, but I'd like to know what you've learned about the importance of books, of having books in the classroom, since you've been a teacher for almost a decade now. I mean, I'm assuming all these
Right.
books that you chose, that you had in your own library, were things that you thought were important for
Mhm.
students to have, that maybe, I'm assuming, were not available at the school library. I don't know, or maybe they were extra copies.
So I would imagine that some of the texts that I have in my classroom library are also available in the school library. But one of the main things that I've attempted to do as an English teacher with my classroom library is supplement deficiencies in official reading lists. Around the country and here in Oklahoma, those reading lists have been stubbornly static for decades. And some of that has to do with funding. And a lot of that as well has to do with some, systemic issues that we have in our school systems and really nationwide when it comes to centering a multitude of inclusive voices. So in terms of kind of responding to that question about what I've learned, I think it's important to mention the educators of color and the scholars of color, specifically Black women who have created the language that I'm using now, right, to confront what I see as an injustice. Scholars like Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, for example, who, to those folks who don't know, is kind of known as the mother of multicultural children's literature. But I go back to one of the texts that has meant the most to me growing up. So I'm a millennial, and I had the privilege of getting to be a kid during the heyday of Harry Potter. And while I know that in the years since, it has been profoundly disappointing to learn about some of the author's personally held beliefs, I think those words and stories from the text still resonate. And so I remember Albus Dumbledore, right, saying that words are our most inexhaustible source of magic. And I firmly believe that, kind of going off of some of the scholarship of Rudine Sims Bishop, stories are windows, right? They're mirrors, they're sliding glass doors, they're prisms and periscopes and any other, household items that you can think of. Although I realize that not a lot of people probably have periscopes in their homes, so that might have been a little bit of a stretch, but you know what, we'll go with it. But I think it's important to understand the effects that those stories and those texts can have on readers. Not only can they be, right, mirrors reflecting us and our experiences back to ourselves and validating those experiences. And for everyone who's been a teenager or is currently a teenager, that validation is very, very much important. But they can act too as windows, right? So helping us see into experiences that we ourselves may not have, but are nonetheless vitally important. And it's that empathy, that openness to difference, and that understanding of difference as an asset rather than a liability that has those far-reaching, broad impacts. If we think about, us as a country, for example, we've really been riven by a partisan split that has sent folks scrambling back to their own echo chambers. And it's had such a devastating effect on our democracy at every level. And that's where books can really play such an important role. They help us understand each other, right? They help us understand how we can connect and how we can collaborate with folks who maybe don't have the same lived experiences as we do. And so that is, at least for me, I think one of the primary things that I've learned, right, about the importance of books, whether those are physical books or digital. Our stories make our futures possible.
Right. Yeah. And quite frequently, maybe you don't agree with someone politically or in whatever way, but you can find common ground because you both like the same book, right?
Right.
You're both
and
fans,
yeah.
Harry Potter fans or whatever, and you can kind of at least find that common ground. And it's interesting that you mentioned Harry Potter. I'm a little ashamed to admit that I've never read any of the Harry Potter books, but I'm a little bit older than you.
Oh, well, we need to chat after this too.
yeah, I think so. But it's interesting because Harry Potter the series has also found itself on various banned books lists.
Yes.
So, it's not people might be surprised to know that. But I have a couple of other questions related to that. One of them is that, speaking of Harry Potter, I'm assuming you read that when you were a kid or a teenager. I don't know how old you were, but I'm just curious if what your reading life was like when you were a teenager, and did you have limits on what you were allowed to read or not allowed, or what you were allowed to read by your parents, for example? Did they ever tell you, oh, we don't want you reading this book, or was it pretty much like you can just read anything you feel like reading?
So some of my earliest memories have to do with my parents reading to me. From the time I was an infant, if we go back in the home movies catalogs, right, those earliest videos, especially my mom, of reading fairy tales and taking me and my younger siblings to libraries. Libraries have been an integral part of, I think, every facet of my life from the time I was a young child up until now. As an English teacher and a graduate student, I understand the value of free and unfettered access to information. I remember growing up that, I hit a slump in elementary school when it came to my interest in reading. And it was Harry Potter actually that got me back into that experience. I remember going to the library and checking out, the books. I remember waiting in the midnight release lines. My mom has so many stories. She can tell folks about, how I dragged her to the local Walmart every, year or so to get the next copy of that book. But as a teenager too, I experienced some difficult times and some trauma that really does still go with me even today. And I think about the function that stories served for me during that time as an escape into a world that didn't look like the one around me, that I didn't really want to be a part of. As someone also on the autism spectrum, it can be very, very difficult to have conversations with fellow humans, and books were a way, for me at least, to keep having those conversations. Maybe not with another person in the room, but with the page, right, and the author, and my interactions as a reader and what I brought to the table regarding that. And I think books gave me the words to articulate myself, right? Who I was, who I am, right? Who I'm becoming. And when I think about the importance of inclusive literature, I want that for my students. I want that for, the kids in public school classrooms today. I want them to have something that reflects and validates and encourages who they are, regardless of who that is. I think about James Baldwin and his talk to teachers in talking about inclusion and the importance of literature in the classroom. And for Baldwin, inclusion is looking at anything and everything and even each other, right? And feeling free to draw one's own conclusions. And for me, right, that's what books are about, regardless of genre. And that's why I feel so strongly about providing access to as much literature as possible for my students and for the students in my state.
Yeah, and you just answered one of the next questions I was going to ask, which is all about what is inclusive education for you, but basically it's providing as many viewpoints as possible that could be relevant for your students, and kind of anticipating maybe their needs, either from your own personal experience or maybe just because those students and they're willing to confide in you or what have you. And so then you are better able to recommend something for them to kind of, maybe they're having a hard time and you think, oh, I remember that this book really helped me, and you can recommend it to a student. So inclusive for you would be providing all of those different points of view.
Yes, I mean, inclusive, for me, and again, paraphrasing James Baldwin here, I mean, it means everyone, right? It means making space where it didn't exist before. It means hope and opportunity to aim for something better. It's hard to imagine something if you've never seen it. And so that's where, again, inclusive education and expansive multicultural literature can play a significant role. I would also stress that, while I think there are some incredibly impactful uses of books and literature and the various genres and subgenres, when it comes to, some of these lofty ideals, right, like democracy and access to information and better, more empathetic futures. But I want to stress too that as an aspect of inclusive education, sometimes books can just be entertainment. There's absolutely nothing wrong with reading a book just because it's enjoyable, just because it's fun. And that is a big part of inclusivity as well. Our students don't come to us as tabula rasa. They don't come to us as, empty pictures, or they come to us with a whole host of experiences and identities and opinions. And so the more opinions we can provide them with, the more inclusive, the more meaningful, and the more impactful I think that education becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to ask you one more thing, because, you're in Oklahoma and this is going on there, but what would you say to people who maybe they say, oh, but I don't live in Oklahoma, so why is it a big deal to me what's happening there? Or I don't have kids in high school, or I don't even have kids. And secondly, what can people do to kind of combat these things that are happening?
Yeah, so to kind of answer the first part of that question, why should folks outside of Oklahoma even care? I know that there's a tendency, right, especially when it comes to states like Oklahoma, to just kind of say, yeah, not surprising. But I want to stress that there are so many people And I've had to be reminded of this from time to time as well. And the past couple of months have been incredibly impactful in issuing those reminders. There are so many people here who genuinely want to see better for themselves, for their children, for their friends, for their family, for their state. And they are working to make that happen. And what they need is not dismissiveness. They don't need deference. They need support. And that's where I think folks from around the country have a vested interest in what's happening in the center of our country. Anyone who's ever picked up a book, any reader should care, because any attack on intellectual freedom is attack on all of us. Schools are a foundation of the democracy we'd like to be. And so if we, want to claim ourselves as, a beacon of democracy, then we need to invest in our schools, and we need to push back anywhere, anytime there is an attempt to curtail, that freedom of expression, that access, to information. In Oklahoma, we have some very powerful, leaders in state government who have spent the last year or two very loudly labeling certain identities as obscenities. And those are marginalized identities, from places such as the LGBTQ plus community. And again, that requires all of us, whether you're a member of that community or not, to step in and stand up and not allow, that kind of violence and erasure to occur. Again, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. To go to that second part of your question, what can people do? I mean, I think it's important that people keep in mind that all you really need to do is to do the next right thing, whatever that right thing is. Keep reading, for one thing. Patronize and contribute to your local and community libraries. Give to credible organizations, like the ACLU, like organizations that are designed to combat exactly what we see happening with censorship in our country. I'll take a moment here to do a little plug for the Brooklyn Public Library and their Books Unbanned program. This is funded through private donations. Donate to these organizations, scan the QR code. And for the love of William Shakespeare, please vote in November.
Thank you, Summer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Summer. Once again, for anyone who joined us during this conversation, I'm Jason from the editorial team here at Fable. Michele is an avid member of our Authors Guild Banned Books Club, and Summer is an educator from Oklahoma. Thank you so much for sharing all of this today. One thing I'd like to stress as before we say goodbye to you is you should also support and donate to the teachers in your community. Summer reminded me of this when I had the privilege of talking to her about her whole library was funded by her, and her classroom, and these students, these young readers depend on your support. So definitely let's give that to the teachers in our community as well. Thank you so much. It was a very moving conversation. I feel so privileged to have been a part of it. Thank you, Summer and Michele. You can return to your days now.